music. Yes. 3, 2, 1, go.
Dear learners, good afternoon and welcome to English Language 2 session. Today we are going to share about one of the topics in advanced level, specifically for Form 6, but this topic, of course, is also beneficial to students who are taking literature in English for Form 3, Form 4, as well as Form 5. We are going to discuss on the topic analyzing literal works and the subtopic poetry. The main objective for today's lesson is identifying poetic devices. So by the end of this lesson, we expect you as a learner, you will be in a position to identify poetic devices from a given poem, but also you will be in a position to apply poetic devices in simple poems that you can compose. Firstly, what do you understand by poetic devices? Poetic devices refers to tools or techniques used by the poet to give their poems musical effect, emphasis, and enhance the meaning. Poetic devices, therefore, help to enhance a poem's meaning, help a reader to relate the poem to real life experience, and decorate a poem and make it more interesting. There are three categories of poetic devices. Firstly, there is language device, musical device, as well as structural devices. So for today's lesson, we are going to discuss basically on these two devices, language devices, musical devices. In the next session, we shall have the last, which is structural devices. What does it mean by language devices? Language devices refer to different forms of language manipulation that a poet uses to enhance the meaning in a specific poem. Common language devices include figures of speech such as simile, personification, metaphor, symbol, imagery, synchrony, etc. Number 2 category for poetic devices, these are sound devices, sometimes called musical devices. Sound devices refers to any element that can be used to enhance musicality in a poem. Don't forget, a poem is meant to be sung. Is differently from a novel which is meant to be read, or from a play which is meant to be acted on stage. For that case, one of the poetic devices must be musical element. They help to bring about musicality in a poem. This includes onomatopoeia, rhyme, alliteration, refrain, anaphora, anadiplosis, assonance, consonance, etc. The last category of poetic devices, these are structural devices. Structural devices are manifested in a way a poem is organized. Don't forget that despite that a poem is meant to be read loudly or recited or sung, yet it must have a certain form, meaning that it has the way it is organized. And this feature that help in organizing a poem includes meter, punctuations, the verses. How do we get a verse? A verse is composed of simple elements such as meter, and a verse plus a verse makes a stanza. So various forms of stanzas can make a type of stanza and can affect the way the poetry wants to organize ideas. If an idea is organized in one stanza, it means it's a short poem. But if an idea is larger, then it's a decision for the poet to decide how many stanzas, depending on what she wants it to communicate. However, in today's session, we are just going to discuss on the first two devices. But next session, when we meet again, we shall go on with the structural devices. Let us now go to discuss on these devices and the way they appear in different poems. We are going to use different poems which are commonly used by secondary students, Form 6, but the same poems are also used by Form 4 as well as Form 3. And these poems are Africa by David Diop, You Are Lost by Isaac Ngoma, Your Pain by Armando Bebuza, A Freedom Song by Marjorie Orude, lastly, Do the Nation by Henry Barrow. First, let us pass through the language devices. As I've told you, today we are going to discuss on two categories of poetic devices. Let us start with the common one, personification as one of the language devices. In the selected poems we have put there, the poem Africa, the poet David Diop has applied personification because it assumes that Africa is a person who can hear, who can reply. That's why you can see is asking Africa, Africa, tell me Africa. You see? So we say Africa is given the ability to speak and listen like a human being, as it is seen in the poem Africa by David Diop. Apart from that, another figure of speech, of course, which makes it a language device, is a scenic dog. What is a scenic dog? A scenic dog is a figure of speech, or we would say a device in which a theme for a part represents the whole part, or the whole part can represent the part, meaning that when we have a whole representing a part, or vice versa, in literary genres, then we say it's the application of scenic dog. How does this form of figure of speech or poetic device and a language device appear in the poems we have selected here? In the poem You Are Pain by Armando Bebuza, we can see the way it manipulates the language to show that eyes, blood, scars, the way they can represent a human being. Many of students do confuse scenic rock under this regard with the personification. In fact, here, the eye is a part of human being. Therefore, when it says eyes will be speaking of revolts, it means it's a human being who will be speaking of revolts. For that case, this is not personification, because the eye has not been given a human ability because it's a part of human being. Therefore, is that the part of human being has represented the human being. This is what we call scenic rock, and the other verses, as you can see, blood shall get victory, scars will be remembering the whips. Also, in the poem You Are Lost, there is application of scenic dog. Isaac Ngoma, in fact, used this technique, and does this when is lamented to the dada. The dada only touched me with the tenderness that asks where my wallet is. Here, tenderness, some of my students have been confusing with the personification. This is not personification, it's scenic. Why? Because tenderness is a part of that dada. Here is saying the dada himself, herself, asks where the man's wallet is. For that case, with these examples, you can also visit in other poems and try to look on how scenic dog has been applied in the poems you have been meeting. But from that, in these selected poems, one of the commonest figure of speech, as well, which we call here language device, is symbolism. And symbolism has been applied almost in all poems selected there, but here, let us just use a few examples. In the poem Africa, the young tree is a symbol of new Africa. Also, faded flowers in this poem may symbolize challenges facing African continent. As you can see, impetus child, that tree, young and strong, that tree over there, splendidly along amidst white and fading flowers, that is your Africa spring up anew. Don't forget, dear readers, symbolism, in fact, it's a factor a concrete object that should be representing an abstract. Here we have the trees. A concrete is something we can see, we can touch, but it represents Africa, something that we can assume abstractly. For that case, don't mix an abstract and an abstract. A concrete cannot represent a concrete, and an abstract cannot represent an abstract. That's one of the rules in symbolism. But as one of the poem Freedom Song, meat and sugar represents nutrition which Atieno lacked during her lifetime. This is really the last stanza where the persona says, meat and sugar more than all she ate such in our life. Here the poet Marjorie had said to use meat and sugar, but to represent that among other things Atieno lacked were nutrition. She was not accessing nutritious foods. For that case, use meat and sugar, of which we know commonly are part and parcel of man's dish, of man's beer. For that case, these things Atieno did not get them, but it's just a representative. These are symbols representing that she were missing other things when she was alive. Another language device is rhetorical question. A rhetorical question, in fact, is a device in which a question is done without intending to get a reply. For example, in the poem Africa, where the person asks, is this you? This bag that is bent? It's just a device to stress on the point that Africa content is not upright. But ironically, one may think maybe the persona was just waiting for Africa to reply. This can't be, but it was to stress that the way Africa is not upright. Then he wants us to interrogate what made it bent. In the poem A Freedom Song, the rhetorical question as a device is applied in various ways, where the poet wants to say that no one cares for Atieno. That girl stays too long at the market. Who will teach her what is right? In fact, Atieno's uncle, in fact, with the persona here, doesn't ask this question to anyone. But it's a technique used by the poet. The poet wants to show that Atieno is not being cared of. And a reader later don't wonder if you find something immoral happening to Atieno, but God forbid, because she has no one to take care, to teach her what is right at that age. So these are some of the language devices that I tried to share with you, but you can go in other poems and look for other common devices such as irony, metaphor, simile, imagery, and find a way, the way they are applied, they are used in the poems. Now let us move to sound devices. This is the second category of poetic devices. Anaphora, being one of the sound devices, has been pointed here so that it may be discussed well and fully to at least to make you aware its use, its application. Anaphora refers to the poetic device in which the same word is repeated at the beginning of consecutive verses. For example, in the poem Africa, anaphora is applied in the first 3 verses, whereby the first word in each of those verses is Africa, Africa, Africa. Most of students don't just say generally that it's repetition, of course, but in every kind of repetition has a specific name. So in this regard, this is what you call anaphora. For that case, at the other time you meet the poem, you must be in a position to ask yourself, what kind of repetition is this? Therefore, let us now move on to see another poem which uses anaphora. A Freedom Song, of course. Anaphora as sound device is applied in the first stanza. Why? To emphasize that the key issue in this poem is Atieno. That's why Marjorie purposefully used Atieno at the beginning of 3 verses. Atieno washes dishes, Atieno cuts the chicken, Atieno gets up early. Why? Because Atieno is the main center. There's this kind of repetition whereby a word appears at the beginning of consecutive verses is anaphora. In fact, anaphora has got a counter, and this is epiphora. Sometimes epiphora is called the epistrophe. This is a musical device in which the same word or a phrase is repeated at the end of different verses. Of course, many of us will say it's rhyme. We agree it's rhyme, but how does this poet make use of epiphora to have the rhymes at this point? For example, you see in the poem Amanda Mwebuza's Your Pain, your pain, my pain, your eyes, my hands, your hands. At every end of the first two verses in Amanda Mwebuza's Your Pain applies, in fact, this kind of musical device whereby the word is repeated. This, if you can see, is different from the previous technique whereby at the beginning we have seen the way Majoruri use atieno as a repetition to show the main emphasis for the poem is atieno, as well as in David Diop's Africa, and the way Africa has been repeated at the beginning. Therefore, that's anaphora, and as opposed to epistrophe. Another poetic device that is not commonly used, but every time I look into the poems you have, it is applied, is anadiplosis. What is anadiplosis? Anadiplosis, in fact, as a musical device, is when the poet uses a word at the end of a verse, then that word becomes the first word in the next verse. It is applied in different parts in the selected poems, common book we use in your schools. But here I've just picked only a single stanza from the poem Africa by David Diop. And here is when we can see the blood of your sweat. The word sweat ends this verse, and the same word sweat becomes the first in the next verse. If you can see, the same verse ends with the word, then the word becomes the first word in the next verse. This is what is known as anadiplosis. Dear learners, let us keep discussing other forms of musical device and the way they have been applied by different poets in the common poems we use at schools. Another is rhyme. A rhyme, in fact, is a poetic device which involves a repetition of a similar sound at the end of various verses or at certain intervals in poems. Verses in a poem rhyme together if their final quarter situations are occupied by the same sound as it is in the following verses from the Freedom Song. You can see one of the stanzas as some forms of rhymes. As you can see, since she is my sister's child, this verse ends with the T sound. Then the next verse ends with the prayer. Then the third verse, sit. If you can see, G and T, they have the same sound. We have what we call near rhymes. The rhymes not necessarily that it should be exactly the same sound, but here, if you can see phonologically, it has the same effect. So the first verse rhymes with the third verse, and the second verse rhymes with the fourth verse. So the first and third verse rhyme together, as well as the second and fourth verse rhyme together. Therefore, if we could be now scanning for rhyme schemes of this stanza, which I will call, then you say it has AB, meaning that the first verse rhymes with the second, and the third rhymes with the fourth. Let us also see in the other parts of the poem where the poets in selected poems have applied this kind of technique. This is not else but Bao in his poem Rule the Nation, whereby in this select excerpt, you can see filtering back, that back you can see the first two lines rhyme, and the next three verses rhyme, and the last two verses rhyme because they have the same sound at the end. That's shortly we say about it, right? And its rhyme scheme therefore would be AA, BB, CC. Apart from rhyme, there's also refrain, and this has been also one of the common poetic devices used by many poets, and it's common even in the poems we always read. What is the refrain? This, in fact, is a kind of verse which keeps repeating of each stanza. So many poets do find this technique in order to facilitate an idea. For example, the poem A Freedom Song. There is application of this device, whereby each stanza ends with the phrase Etienne. In Luo tribe, the word yo signifies pity. Therefore, Marjorie, in fact, here use this poetic device to show that she's in sympathizing with Etienne through what Etienne passes through. Therefore, this sort of a refrain, you can just go and pick other poems and try to look on how refrain has been applied by other poets. Having discussed so, and seen shortly what the poetic device mean, let us now go to selected poems and see how these devices have been applied. But before we go there, don't forget, at the end we shall have the homework. And this homework, in fact, the questions you can read, while we shall be discussing those poems, you must be thinking on how will you attempt these questions in this homework. Why? Because when we're discussing those poems specifically, and they have been presented here, the aim is to take you through other poems by using the same skills. So